Renewed fighting around Iran is widening the global oil supply gap faster than expected, which could push energy prices higher for households and industries everywhere. This is Omni View, episode 141. The International Energy Agency reports that global oil inventories will fall this quarter at more than twice the previously estimated rate. The agency ties the sharper drop directly to the flare-up in the Iran conflict, even as high prices begin to cut demand. The International Energy Agency focuses its forecast on physical barrels and storage levels, treating the conflict as a supply shock that overrides weaker consumption. Bloomberg presents the same inventory numbers but places greater weight on how sustained high prices may eventually curb demand in importing regions. Both accounts rest on the undisputed fact that inventories are declining more rapidly than earlier projections. The agency's assessment draws on production figures, tanker movements, and refinery runs reported by member governments and commercial trackers. Renewed restrictions on export routes from the Persian Gulf region have reduced available volumes more sharply than models built on earlier assumptions. At the same time, elevated prices have begun to trim consumption in price-sensitive markets, yet the net effect on stocks remains a steeper draw than previously calculated. Markets will watch the next IEA monthly report for any revision in the size of the projected deficit. Shifting now to developments in South Asia. Pakistani security forces carried out operations in Bannu district after intelligence reports and surveillance identified militant movements and hideouts. Police stated that at least 10 militants were killed during the raids. The Hindu reports the actions as routine counter-militancy work based on local intelligence. Regional security analysts view the same operations as part of longer-running efforts to prevent cross-border militant activity from affecting neighboring areas. The operations followed continuous surveillance of specific hideouts and movement patterns. Local police described the raids as intelligence-driven responses rather than large-scale sweeps. Neighboring governments have previously expressed concern that instability in the district could spill across the border into Afghanistan. Officials have not announced whether additional operations are planned in the district. Next, lawmakers in Kenya are preparing to examine a package of education reforms. The National Assembly will consider 6 bills that address governance of basic education, national assessments, curriculum development, teacher training, tertiary funding, and recognition of qualifications. All Africa presents the package as an attempt to modernize rules across the sector. Education stakeholders in Kenya have previously called for clearer funding formulas and updated assessment standards, and the bills aim to respond to those long-standing concerns. The measures target both primary and tertiary levels, including how qualifications from outside the country are evaluated. Parliamentary committees will examine each bill separately before any votes. Earlier reform attempts in the sector have stalled over disagreements on funding allocation between national and county governments. Parliamentary committees are expected to begin detailed scrutiny of the individual measures. Meanwhile, overnight strikes hit port cities on both sides of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Attacks struck the Russian port of Novorossiysk and an unnamed Ukrainian port city, killing a child in Novorossiysk and damaging dozens of buildings. Local officials described the night as particularly severe for residents. Al Jazeera reports the civilian impact and infrastructure damage on both sides of the conflict. Ukrainian and Russian authorities each attribute responsibility to the other, while confirming the locations hit. In Novorossiysk, the mayor noted that a child was among the casualties and that many residential structures sustained damage. The Ukrainian port city also recorded fatalities and structural harm, though fewer details have been released. Both sides have continued to exchange strikes on energy and transport infrastructure in recent weeks. Local authorities in the affected cities have begun damage assessments and temporary relocation of residents. Turning to the economy, Singapore has raised its full-year growth forecast. Official data showed the economy grew 5.9% in the April to June period, prompting the government to lift its annual growth outlook. Nikkei Asia links the stronger reading to resilient external demand. Regional economists note that the upward revision signals continued momentum in trade-related sectors. The second quarter figure exceeded earlier expectations and reflected strength in manufacturing and services tied to global supply chains. Government statisticians revised the full-year projection upward on the basis of this performance. Neighboring economies have also reported firmer trade volumes in the same period. In technology news, Taiwan's Foxconn posted a sharp profit increase. The world's largest contract electronics maker reported a 35% profit increase and forecast continued strong growth through 2026 on the back of artificial intelligence orders. Al Jazeera ties the result directly to the AI server boom. Industry analysts expect similar patterns at other major electronic suppliers serving the same market. The company cited higher orders for servers used in data centers as the main driver. Management stated that revenue visibility for the remainder of the year remains positive. Competitors in the contract manufacturing space have also reported rising demand for AI hardware components. Now, some progress worth knowing about. The UK government announced that homes within 1,600 feet of newly upgraded electricity pylons will receive a £250 yearly reduction in electricity bills, with the first eligible sites now identified. BBC reporting frames the measure as compensation for communities hosting new transmission infrastructure needed to connect renewable generation. Energy companies have welcomed the clarity on costs, while noting that final rollout depends on planning approvals. The discount applies only to properties close to lines that have undergone specific upgrades. Officials have published maps showing the initial locations that qualify. The scheme forms part of broader efforts to expand grid capacity for wind and solar projects. Now, to really understand this story, there is something most coverage leaves out. Most coverage treats the IEA's deficit numbers as simple counts of missing barrels. Yet the agency actually combines reported production data, tanker tracking, and refinery throughput estimates that can shift when conflict disrupts reporting from one side. During past supply shocks, such as the 2019 attacks on Saudi facilities, the IEA revised its initial deficit figures upward once satellite and shipping data filled gaps left by official statistics. The same process is now underway with the Iran-related disruption, where some export routes face restrictions while others reroute. The agency was founded after the 1973 oil crisis to coordinate responses among industrialized importers and has since expanded its monitoring tools to include commercial data providers. When conflict limits access to ground reports, analysts rely more heavily on vessel tracking and satellite imagery of storage sites. Knowing this, when you hear a headline claiming the deficit has doubled, you can check whether the increase stems from new physical losses or from improved data collection that simply reveals earlier undercounting. Persistent differences between the IEA's figures and those issued by OPEC often trace back to varying assumptions about how much oil is moving through restricted choke points. One concrete step is to compare the IEA's monthly oil market report with the parallel OPEC monthly report. Persistent gaps between the two often highlight where conflict has reduced transparency rather than where actual supply has changed. Readers can also examine weekly tanker data releases from firms that specialize in maritime tracking to see which routes show the largest deviations from normal volumes. If you want to go deeper on the oil supply story, compare how Bloomberg and Al Jazeera are covering the impact of renewed Middle East conflict on global energy. Tomorrow, watch for updates on whether Kenyan parliamentary committees advance any of the 6 education bills after initial review. That's Omni View. The news can feel heavy, but understanding what's actually happening and what's being done about it beats doom scrolling every time. Stay curious, pick one story from today and read it from a second outlet you don't usually open. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nara Network. Links in the show notes. One more thing. If you liked today's episode, our sister show Models and Agents for Beginners is worth a spot in your feed. Artificial Intelligence Explained Simply for beginners and curious teens. It's one of the Nara Network's daily briefings, all free at naranetwork.com. And on the website, every episode's visuals live in our free image gallery at naranetwork.com gallery. Royalty-free under Creative Commons. Download with attribution. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.